The warning nobody believed. The council chamber of Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars, a massive station where the galaxy's greatest powers met to discuss matters of war and peace. Today, the chamber was filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds. Insectoid beings clicked their mandibles. Gaseous entities swirled in containment fields. Reptilian delegates sat with perfect stillness. All of them had gathered for one reason, to hear the testimony of Ambassador Torin. Torin was a Keltharian, a species known for their warrior culture and unshakable pride. His gray skin looked darker than usual, and his triple-jointed arms trembled slightly as he approached the speaking platform. For 30 years, Torin had remained silent about the human war. Now, finally, he was ready to speak. The chamber fell silent as Torin began. His voice carried across the vast space, reaching every delegate. Honored members of the council, I stand before you not as a warrior, but as someone who witnessed the end of my people's glory. 30 years ago, we made a choice that destroyed our empire. We attacked humanity. A wave of whispers spread through the chamber. The Keltharian Empire had once controlled 50 star systems. Now they controlled only 3. Everyone knew they had fought humans, but nobody knew the details. You must understand, Torin continued, we were the strongest military force in this sector. We had conquered 20 civilizations. Our generals were brilliant. Our soldiers were fearless. When we discovered the humans in the frontier territories, we thought they would be easy prey. The holographic display above Torin's head flickered to life. It showed a small human settlement on a remote moon called Haven's Edge. Simple buildings, farming equipment, and maybe 500 people living quiet lives. This was our target, Torin said. A farming colony. They grew food and raised children. They had no warships, no planetary defenses, just one small communications array. Our fleet commander, General Vec, called it a training exercise for new recruits. A delegate from the Crystalline Confederacy raised a glowing appendage. Ambassador Torin, if this was such a small target, why do you speak of it with such weight? Torin's eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them, they held a darkness that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Because those 500 farmers taught us what humanity truly is. They showed us that humans don't measure victory by what they gain. They measure it by what you lose. The hologram changed, showing the Keltharian fleet. 15 massive warships surrounded the small moon. They were designed to destroy planets, not farming colonies. General Vec sent them a simple message, Torin explained. Leave this moon immediately. This territory now belongs to the Keltharian Empire. You have 6 hours to evacuate. Any human remaining after that time will be considered an enemy combatant. The chamber waited in silence. Torin's voice dropped lower, forcing everyone to lean forward to hear. The humans replied in 3 hours. Not 6. 3. Their response was broadcast on all frequencies so everyone in the system could hear it. A woman named Sarah Chen spoke for the colony. She was a farmer who grew wheat and raised 2 sons. She had never held a weapon in her life. The hologram showed Chen's face. She looked ordinary, with dark hair pulled back and dirt on her cheek from working in the fields. But her eyes held something that made Torin's voice crack as he described her. Chen said, "We are not leaving. This is our home. Our children were born here. Our parents are buried here. If you want this moon, you will have to take it from us. And we promise you this, the price will be higher than you can imagine." A reptilian delegate hissed skeptically. Brave words from unarmed farmers facing a military fleet. That's what General Vec thought, Torin replied. He laughed at Chen's message. He gave the order to begin landing operations. Our troops would secure the settlement, remove the humans by force, and establish a military base. Simple, clean, efficient. The hologram showed Keltharian drop ships descending toward the colony. Torin's hands clenched into fists. The first drop ship landed in the main square. 50 soldiers, fully armed, ready for minimal resistance. The humans were waiting for them. Chen stood at the front of a group of maybe 40 people. No weapons visible. Just farmers in their work clothes. Torin paused, his breathing heavy. Our squad leader, Lieutenant Rax, approached Chen with restraints. He was going to arrest her first, make an example. Chen looked him in the eye and said, "You should have stayed in orbit." Then she pressed a button on a device in her hand. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the air circulation system seemed to quiet. The entire settlement exploded. Every building, every piece of equipment, every structure the humans had built over 10 years. Chen had turned her home into a bomb. The explosion killed all 50 of our soldiers instantly. It destroyed 2 more drop ships that were trying to land. And it killed every human in the settlement. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several delegates stood in shock. 500 humans died in that blast, Torin said, his voice shaking. Men, women, children. They chose death over surrender. Chen looked at our lieutenant in his final moment and smiled. She was happy to die if it meant taking us with her. The hologram showed the crater where the settlement had been. Nothing remained but scorched ground and debris. General Vec was enraged. He ordered a full investigation. How had farmers built such a massive bomb? Where did they learn such tactics? What we discovered changed everything we thought we knew about humanity. Torin pressed a button. The hologram showed recovered data files, communication logs, and engineering blueprints. Chen was a farmer, yes. But before she came to Haven's Edge, she had been an engineer. She knew explosives. She knew structure. She had spent 3 months preparing for our arrival. The moment humans detected our scout ships in the system, she began turning her home into a weapon. A gaseous delegate pulsed with agitation. One settlement. One attack. Surely this was an isolated incident. Torin's laugh was bitter and cold. That's what we told ourselves. General Vec wanted to continue the campaign. There were 12 more human settlements in the frontier territories. He said we would approach them differently, with more caution. The hologram changed, showing another human colony called New Terra. This one was larger, with about 2,000 people. We surrounded New Terra with our fleet. This time, we didn't give them 6 hours. We demanded immediate surrender. The colony administrator was a man named Marcus Webb. He had been a teacher before the war. He taught history to teenagers. Webb's face appeared in the hologram. He was an older man with gray hair and gentle eyes that belonged to someone who had spent his life helping others learn. Webb's response came in 10 minutes. He said, "We heard about Haven's Edge. Sarah Chen was my sister. She showed you what one farming colony could do. Let me show you what 2,000 humans can accomplish." Torin's voice grew quieter, more intense. We should have withdrawn then. We should have recognized the threat. But General Vec was too proud. He ordered an immediate assault. 20 drop ships, 500 soldiers, overwhelming force. The hologram showed the assault beginning. Caltharian ships descended toward New Terra's main city. The humans didn't explode their colony this time. They had a different strategy. Webb had organized every adult in the settlement into defensive teams. They used farming equipment as weapons. Harvesting machines became mobile weapons platforms. Irrigation systems were filled with chemicals that burned Caltharian skin. Greenhouses were turned into sniper positions. The display showed the battle in brutal detail. Caltharian soldiers struggled through streets that had become death traps. Our troops were trained warriors. The humans were teachers, farmers, shop owners. It shouldn't have been a fight. But the humans had advantages we hadn't considered. They knew every building, every tunnel, every hiding spot. They had prepared for weeks. And most importantly, they were fighting for their homes. Torin pointed to a section of the hologram showing a school building. Teacher Morrison held that school for 6 hours against 40 of our soldiers. He used desks as barricades, chemistry equipment as explosives, and his knowledge of the building structure to create kill zones. Morrison was 63 years old. He had taught literature. He died when the building collapsed, taking 15 of our soldiers with him. The chamber watched in growing horror as the battle continued in the hologram. Human after human fought with desperate creativity. Engineer Park turned the water treatment plant into a fortress. She held it with 12 defenders against 100 soldiers. When we finally breached the facility, Park flooded it with contaminated water. She drowned herself and 37 of our troops. Torin's voice cracked. Dr. Yamamoto used his medical facility as a trap. He pretended to surrender, offered to treat our wounded. When our medics entered, he detonated surgical equipment he'd modified into explosives. Yamamoto killed himself, his staff, and 22 of our soldiers. The hologram showed body after body, human and Keltharian mixed together in death. The battle lasted 3 days. We lost 412 soldiers. Every human defender died. Not one surrendered. Not one asked for mercy. They fought until they had nothing left, then they found ways to kill us even in death. Torin looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as he could. On the 3rd day, we finally secured the colony. General Vec stood in the ruins of New Terra's city center. That's when Webb's final message played on every speaker in the settlement. Webb's voice filled the chamber, calm and clear. To the Keltharian Empire, you have won this battle. You have killed 2,000 of us. But ask yourself, was it worth 400 soldiers? Was it worth 3 days of fighting? You have 11 more colonies to conquer. If each one costs you this much, will you have an army left when you're finished? This is humanity's promise, every meter you take, you pay in blood. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. That was 30 years ago, Torin said finally. General Vec withdrew from human space. He told our high command that conquering humanity would cost more than our empire could survive. They called him a coward. They removed him from command and sent a new general with a larger fleet. The ambassador's expression grew darker. That fleet never returned home. None of the 3 fleets we sent after that returned home. The humans didn't just fight us. They studied us. They learned our tactics, our weaknesses, our fears. And they used everything against us. Torin straightened, his voice growing stronger. I am here today because the Vraxian hegemony has announced plans to conquer human territory. They believe their technology will make the difference. They believe they will succeed where we failed. He looked directly at the Vraxian delegate, a towering figure covered in metallic scales. I am here to tell you, don't attack the humans. Not because they will defeat you in glorious battle. Not because they have superior technology. Attack them not because winning will cost you everything you have. Humans don't fight to win. They fight to make sure you can't win either. The price of pride. The Vraxian delegate, Commander Zax, rose from his seat. His metallic scales reflected the chamber's lights, creating an intimidating display. He was huge, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in clawed hands. His species had conquered 40 systems without ever losing a battle. Ambassador Torin, Zax's voice boomed across the chamber, your testimony is noted. However, the Vraxian hegemony is not the Keltharian Empire. Your forces were adequate. Ours are superior. Your tactics were conventional. Ours are advanced. With respect, we believe your failures came from your own limitations, not from any special quality in humans. Murmurs of agreement came from several delegates. The Vraxians were known as the galaxy's premier military power. Their conquest of the Thex Dominion had taken only 6 weeks. Their technology was decades ahead of most civilizations. Torin didn't seem surprised by Zax's response. Instead, he looked sad, almost pitying. "Commander, I knew someone would say that. I knew someone would think they were different, better, stronger. That's why I brought a second witness today." The chamber doors opened. A figure entered, moving slowly with the aid of a mechanical walking frame. It was another Vraxian, but this one looked ancient. His scales were dull and scarred. One arm was missing, replaced by a basic prosthetic. His eyes, though, held the same sharp intelligence as Zax's. "This is Admiral Crone," Torin announced. "He commanded the Vraxian Third Fleet 22 years ago. He led the first Vraxian assault on human space." Shock rippled through the chamber. Commander Zax's scales darkened with what looked like embarrassment or anger. Admiral Crone was reported killed in action. His fleet was lost in a navigational accident. "That's what your government told you," Crone said, his voice rough but clear. "They lied. My fleet wasn't lost to an accident. It was destroyed by humans. And I am the only survivor." The Admiral made his way slowly to the speaking platform. Torin stepped aside, giving Crone the space to tell his story. 22 years ago, Crone began, the Vraxian High Command identified a human system called Liberty's Hope. Intelligence reports said it contained 3 colonies with a combined population of 50,000. The system had minimal defenses. A few patrol ships, some automated satellites, nothing that could stand against a proper military fleet. The hologram changed, showing the Liberty's Hope system. 3 planets orbited a white star, each marked with human settlements. I commanded 37 warships. The finest vessels in the Vraxian fleet. Our orders were simple: occupy the system, relocate the humans, and establish a forward military base. High Command wanted it done in 2 weeks. Crone's remaining hand gripped his walking frame tightly. We entered the system with confidence. We had fought and defeated species far more advanced than humans. We had weapons that could crack planets. We had soldiers trained from birth to be warriors. What could farmers and colonists do against such power? The Admiral pressed a button on his walking frame. The hologram showed the Vraxian fleet approaching the first planet, Liberty Prime. We sent our standard ultimatum. Evacuate immediately or face military action. The planetary governor was a woman named Julia Grant. She had been an artist before becoming a politician. She painted landscapes and taught children to appreciate beauty. Grant's image appeared in the hologram. She was a middle-aged woman with paint stains on her hands and a gentle smile. Grant responded to our ultimatum with a video message. She was standing in an art gallery, surrounded by paintings created by the colony's children. She said, "Admiral Crone, these paintings represent the dreams of our children. Each one shows what they hope their future will look like. I want you to see them because I want you to understand what you're trying to take from us." Crone's voice grew heavy. She showed us painting after painting. A boy who wanted to be a farmer. A girl who dreamed of exploring distant stars. A teenager who hoped to become a doctor. Every painting was a future, a hope, a reason to live. The chamber watched the paintings float through the hologram, each one a glimpse into human dreams. Then Grant said something that should have made me turn my fleet around. She said, "These children will never surrender their dreams. And neither will we. If you come to our world, you will destroy these paintings. You will kill these dreams. But before you do, we will make sure you pay such a price that you will never forget what it costs to steal someone's future." Commander Zax interrupted. "Poetry and paintings are not military strategy. Surely your fleet wasn't intimidated by an artist's words." Crone turned his head slowly to look at Zax. "I thought the same thing. I ordered the invasion to begin. 100 landing craft, 5,000 soldiers. We would secure Liberty Prime in 6 hours." The hologram showed the invasion force descending toward the planet. Cities and settlements appeared on the surface, looking peaceful and unprepared. The humans let us land. No resistance, no defenses, nothing. Our troops secured the landing zones without firing a shot. It seemed too easy, but I thought perhaps Grant's speech had been empty bravado. Perhaps they had decided to surrender after all. Crone's expression darkened. Then our troops began entering the settlements. That's when we learned what Grant had really prepared. The hologram changed, showing Vraxian soldiers moving through human streets. Buildings looked normal, people had evacuated, everything seemed abandoned. Every building was trapped. Not with crude explosives like the Kelfarians faced. Grant had spent months working with the colony's engineers, scientists, and artists. Yes, artists. They had created traps that were both deadly and beautiful. The display showed the first trap activating. A building collapsed in a carefully choreographed sequence, falling in a way that blocked exits and channeled soldiers into kill zones. Engineer Thomas had designed collapse patterns that turned structures into weapons. Buildings fell in specific ways, creating walls, barriers, and crushing zones. Our soldiers found themselves trapped in mazes of debris. Another section of the hologram showed chemical weapons activating. Chemist Rodriguez had modified industrial chemicals into weapons. But she didn't just make them deadly. She made them colorful. Our soldiers died in clouds of blue, red, and gold. It was horrifying and strangely beautiful. Crone pointed to another part of the display. Artist Chen had studied our psychology. She created holographic projections that played on Vraxian cultural fears. Images of our ancestral predators, scenes from our darkest myths. They weren't physically dangerous, but they caused panic, confusion, and mistakes. The chamber watched as the battle deteriorated. Vraxian soldiers, despite their training and equipment, struggled against enemies they couldn't see. We fought for 3 days on Liberty Prime. Every building we entered was a trap. Every street was a death zone. Every shadow could hide a human with a weapon. My soldiers were warriors, but the humans were fighting for their homes. They knew every corner, every weakness, every advantage. Crone's voice grew quieter. On the 4th day, I received a message from Grant. She was still in the art gallery, still surrounded by the children's paintings. She looked tired but determined. She said, "Admiral Crone, you've lost 800 soldiers securing one city. We have 23 more cities on this planet. 2 more planets in this system. And 100 more colonies beyond. Can you afford this price?" The Admiral closed his eyes. I should have listened. I should have withdrawn. But I was proud. I had never retreated from a battle. I ordered the assault to continue. We would take all 3 planets no matter the cost. The hologram showed the Vraxian fleet moving toward the second planet, Liberty's Promise. The governor of Liberty's Promise was a man named David Washington. He had been a history teacher specializing in military conflicts. When we approached his world, he sent me a history lesson. Washington's image appeared, standing in a classroom with maps and battle diagrams behind him. Washington said, "Admiral Crone, throughout history, there have been battles where smaller forces defeated larger ones. Not through superior strength, but through superior will. I'm going to teach you about the Battle of Thermopylae, the Siege of Bastogne, the defense of Stalingrad. I'm going to show you what happens when people decide that death is preferable to defeat." Crone opened his eyes, and they were haunted. Washington was true to his word. He had turned Liberty's Promise into a fortress. But not a traditional fortress. He had studied every battle where defenders had held against impossible odds. He had learned their tactics, their strategies, their mindset. The hologram showed the invasion of Liberty's Promise. This time, the resistance was immediate and fierce. Washington's defenders fought with a discipline that would shame professional soldiers. Every position had overlapping fields of fire. Every retreat was coordinated. Every building was fortified using historical methods adapted to modern weapons. The display showed human defenders holding positions that should have been impossible to defend. Small groups fought like military units, using tactics from Earth's ancient wars modified for space-age combat. Teacher Morrison led a defense of a residential district using tactics from urban warfare in Earth's Second World War. She held for 8 days against 2,000 of my soldiers. When we finally overran her position, we found she had been fighting with a broken leg for the last 3 days. Another section showed a different battle. Farmer Peterson defended an agricultural zone using siege tactics from medieval Earth. He created killing fields, channeled our troops into prepared positions, and used agricultural chemicals as weapons. Peterson was 70 years old. He died taking down 100 of my soldiers. Crone's remaining hand trembled. We fought for 6 weeks on Liberty's promise. Washington coordinated the defense from a bunker deep underground. He broadcast daily messages to his people, encouraging them, teaching them, showing them how to fight. He also sent me daily reports on casualties. Washington's calm voice filled the chamber from the hologram. Day 12, Admiral Crone. You've lost 1,400 soldiers. I've lost 3,000 civilians. But I have 47,000 more willing to die. Do you have enough soldiers to kill us all? The message continued. Day 23. Your casualties, 2,200. Mine, 8,000. The mathematics are simple, Admiral. You're losing 3 soldiers for every 4 humans you kill. Can your empire sustain these losses? Day 41. Your casualties, 4,600. Mine, 18,000. You've secured 7 cities. I have 16 more. At this rate, conquering this one planet will cost you your entire invasion force. Crone stopped the playback. On day 44, I received my final message from Washington. He was still in his command bunker, still coordinating the defense. But he looked exhausted, defeated. He said, Admiral Crone, I'm sending you the coordinates of my command center. I'm going to surrender. The price has become too high. My people have suffered enough. The chamber leaned forward. Finally, a human had given up. I was relieved, Crone admitted. I thought we had finally broken them. I sent my personal guard to accept Washington's surrender. 200 of my best soldiers, led by my most trusted captain. The admiral's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. It was a trap. Washington had turned his command bunker into a massive bomb. When my soldiers arrived to accept his surrender, he detonated it. All 200 of my soldiers died instantly. Washington died with them, still teaching me a lesson about warfare. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Commander Zax's scales had turned almost white with shock. Before he died, Washington sent one final message. It autoplayed after the explosion. He said, Admiral, this is called a Pyrrhic victory. A win that costs so much it might as well be a defeat. You've learned what it means to fight humans. We don't surrender. We teach. And your final lesson is this: winning isn't worth the price. Crone turned to face Commander Zax directly. I withdrew from Liberty's Hope with 12 ships remaining. 37 had entered the system. I had lost over 9,000 soldiers. And I had only conquered 1.5 planets. The admiral's voice grew stronger, more commanding. When I returned home, our high command ordered me to keep silent. They said admitting defeat to humans would weaken our reputation. They told everyone my fleet had been lost in an accident. They wanted to pretend it never happened. Crone looked around the council chamber. But it did happen. And I am here today to tell you what Ambassador Torin already knows: humans are different. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't measure victory by what they gain. They measure it by what you lose. He turned back to Zax. Commander, you stand there in your gleaming scales, proud of your unconquered record. You think you're ready to face humans. But you're not. No one is. Because humans will show you that some victories aren't worth winning. The chamber fell into complete silence. 2 witnesses, 2 species, 2 fleets destroyed. The warning was clear. Ambassador Torin stepped forward again. The Vraxian hegemony has announced plans to begin military operations in human space in 30 days. We are here today to ask you to reconsider. Not for humanity's sake. For yours. Commander Zack stood frozen, his earlier confidence shattered. Around the chamber, delegates whispered urgently to each other. The galaxy had just learned a terrifying truth: humanity couldn't be conquered, not because they were too strong, but because defeating them would destroy whoever tried.